Today, we're exploring a parable that has the power to completely transform how you experience, well, everything. Maybe so, maybe not, is an ancient Taoist story. The author is unknown. Our story takes place in rural China centuries ago. There lived an old farmer who worked a small plot of land with his son. They weren't wealthy, but they had enough. One horse to plow the fields, a modest home, simple meals. One morning, the farmer woke to discover their horse had broken through the fence and run away. Gone. Their only horse, the animal that made their livelihood possible. The neighbors rushed over when they heard the news. "Such terrible luck," they cried. "How unfortunate! What will you do now?" The old farmer looked at them calmly and said, "Maybe so, maybe not." The neighbors were confused, but they left, shaking their heads at the old man's strange response. Well, 3 days later, something remarkable happened. The horse returned, and it didn't come back alone. It brought with it 12 wild horses from the mountains. Suddenly, the farmer and his son didn't have one horse, they had 13. The neighbors came running back. "What incredible fortune!" they shouted. "You're rich now! What amazing luck!" The old farmer smiled gently. "Maybe so, maybe not." The next week, the farmer's son began training one of the wild horses. The animal bucked, and the young man was thrown to the ground. He broke his leg badly. In an era before modern medicine, this was serious. The son would be disabled for a long time, maybe permanently. The neighbors returned, their faces full of sympathy. "How horrible," they lamented. "Your only son injured, and right before harvest season. What terrible, terrible luck." The farmer looked up from tending his son's leg. Maybe so, maybe not. The very next week, military officers arrived in the village. The empire was at war, and they were conscripting every able-bodied young man to fight. They went door to door, taking sons from their families. When they came to the farmer's house, they saw his son with the broken leg and moved on. The young man was spared from a war that would claim the lives of many who marched away that day. The neighbors stood in silence. The farmer simply nodded. Now, you might be thinking this is just a nice story about staying positive, but that's not quite what's happening here. The farmer isn't practicing toxic positivity. He's not saying everything happens for a reason or insisting that bad things are secretly good. He's doing something far more radical. He's refusing to judge at all. This parable comes from the Taoist tradition, a philosophical approach to life that emerged in ancient China around the 4th century BCE. Taoism teaches us about the flow of life, the Tao, and how our suffering often comes not from events themselves, but from our rigid interpretations of them. Think about your own life for a moment. That breakup that devastated you, did it eventually free you to meet someone better suited for you? Or did it lead you to move cities, which changed your entire career trajectory? That job you didn't get, did it keep you available when an even better opportunity came along 6 months later? That investment you made that felt so smart, did it actually drain resources you needed for something more important? We live in a culture obsessed with control and certainty. We track metrics, optimize outcomes, try to engineer good fortune. We label events as wins or losses almost instantly. But the farmer's wisdom suggests that we simply don't have enough information to make those judgments, at least not in the moment. The Taoist philosopher Lao Tzu, writing around the same era this parable emerged, said, "The Tao does nothing, yet leaves nothing undone." What he meant was that nature doesn't force outcomes. Water doesn't struggle to flow downhill. Trees don't strain to grow. They simply respond to conditions as they arise. So, how do we actually apply this ancient wisdom in our modern lives? Let's get practical. Imagine you're scrolling through social media and you see a former colleague just got promoted to a position you wanted. The immediate reaction might be, "That's unfair, I deserved that, this is bad luck." The farmer would say, "Maybe so, maybe not." What if that role would have burned you out? What if staying where you are leads to a different opportunity you can't even see yet? What if you needed this moment to reassess what you actually want? Or here's another scenario. You get into a fender bender on your way to an important meeting. Frustrating, right? Bad timing, bad luck. Maybe so, maybe not. What if that delay meant you weren't on the highway when a major accident occurred? What if the meeting getting rescheduled actually works in your favor? Or what if, and here's the real wisdom, it doesn't matter either way, and peace comes from accepting what is rather than raging against it? This isn't about being passive. The farmer still took care of his son's broken leg, he still lived his life, but he held his interpretations lightly. In psychology, there's a concept called cognitive flexibility, the ability to adapt your thinking when the situation changes. Research shows that people with higher cognitive flexibility experience less anxiety and depression. They recover from setbacks faster. They find creative solutions more easily. The farmer had cognitive flexibility mastered 2,000 years before we had a term for it. There's a beautiful freedom in maybe so, maybe not. It's not nihilism. It's not saying nothing matters. It's saying that our immediate judgments are incomplete, often wrong, and always subject to change as the story continues to unfold. The next time something happens that you immediately label as good or bad fortune, try this. Take a breath, notice the urge to judge, and then, just as an experiment, whisper to yourself, maybe so, maybe not. You might be surprised how much lighter you feel, how much more space opens up, how much less you suffer over circumstances that, in the grand sweep of your life, might turn out to mean something completely different than you imagined. The farmer knew something we forget. Life is long. Consequences ripple in unexpected directions, and the wisest response to fortune, good or bad, is often a gentle shrug and a reminder that the story isn't over yet. Maybe so, maybe not. Thanks for listening.